This podcast is brought to you by Independent Building Advice. IBA acknowledges traditional owners of the land and waters this podcast is recorded on. If you find this episode helpful, follow us for more so we can continue putting out free value for all homeowners in Australia. It really goes a long way. Enjoy the episode.
Okay, this is another podcast today, and we probably have what I would probably call building royalty here, if I'm not saying it too light. Here we've got Assistant to the Director of the HIA, Housing Industry Association. I've worked with Aaron Sice for many years in the past, and he is certainly would have to be, and I don't say this lightly, probably the most knowledgeable person on design in the industry that I've ever met. I thought I knew a fair bit, and then I've had a chat with you, and you've gone, okay, I don't know anything. Welcome aboard, mate.
Thank you. That's a glowing review. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually can't say that lightly because you just know so much on any subject. And talking to Riley, and we just talked about it a minute ago, I could literally have you in here for 2 days and just not run out of conversations. And you talk probably more than I do, which is awesome. So we could have a field day here.
I can quite literally talk about a lot of stuff underwater.
Yeah.
I'm not the best person at barbecues sometimes, but
no.
There's a lot of things going on in the world, and especially in the world of building and planning and design and construction and WHS as well. It all ties in, and it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on board, mate. We're stoked to have you because you have got so much knowledge and information you can share. So we'll try and keep it to a normal size podcast, but we'll have to get back on at the end of it. So tell us for everybody at home a bit about your background, what you're about, what your role as Assistant Director with the HIA, and maybe a bit about what the HIA actually is, and we can go from there.
Of course. So HIA is an industry advocacy body. So we not just looking after builders. A lot of people think we just represent the big builders of town, but they're actually a very small cohort of who we actually represent. It's everything from manufacturers and suppliers of building products right through to the trade base. We're a GTO, so we train apprentices as well. We bring them under our umbrella, so if something goes wrong with their employer, we will just place them with someone else. Awesome. We're also an RTO, so we train people up on the Diploma of Construction, Cert 4 in Construction as well, help them become registered builders as well. But yeah, we've got a good trade base there. We've got a number of different committee structures, so we understand what's happening in the real world on a bi-monthly basis. So it's pretty frequent for a committee structure. And all of that gets then fed up to national for a national policy position. So we've been sitting in with the current Minister, Claire O'Neill, because all of the construction have been brought under Treasury. And so, yeah, we get traction that way. So grassroots at the actual grassroots level all the way up to Canberra. The message is consistent across every state. My role at HIA is to do with building. So that's anything National Construction Code related. I sit on a few different standards committees. That's Australian standards. One of them recently was the one for the prevention of mould or the rectification of mould structures as well. So quite technical, quite
get
sensitive.
Into that. Yeah.
Very sensitive. The other one is also planning, so that's everything, R codes, local policies, all those kinds of things. And then I've also got an environment portfolio, so that's bushfire for subdivisions and BAL ratings. It's also SPP planning for water, so septics and all that kind of thing as well in regional areas. And then of course I've got half the WHS portfolio, so how you're expected to put scaffolds up on site when you've got no room and what that looks like for the construction of a building.
Yeah.
So it's pretty diverse, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're at home and you're listening to this podcast, you can see why I could talk for you for 2 days here. Because what you just covered then is like so much. But like I said, your wealth of information, we are, as an industry, we're actually extremely lucky to have you because you have the construction knowledge as well as the design knowledge combined. So you've worked directly for builders, you've worked independently, so you can see the building industry through multiple lenses. And again, I'm not just blowing wind up you. I'm just saying it's true because you can change hats and go, okay, we're doing this policy. I can see it from the consumer's point of view. I can see it from the builder's point of view. And I can see it from the Shire's point of view, which I think is pretty unique out there.
Yeah, it is. I think a lot of people do tend to specialise in one particular area, but I can almost say I didn't have the luxury to specialise. I've always had to be very general in what I do. I think when you work for a project builder in your early life, I mean, I was poached out of TAFE pre-GST. That was the last boom we saw.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was insane. It really was. And when you're poached out of TAFE, you kind of don't know what you're doing. You're very light foot on the ground. And so I kind of got moved around a lot. I was doing everything from pre-starts to planning assessments and all kinds of things in between. And then I ended up just, I guess, doing a lot of unit developments because I had an understanding of planning better than most people.
Yeah.
I don't know why, I just sort of did. And then I started asking the questions, why is this getting refused, or why is this being requested? And that, I'm a naturally curious person, so I just started digging. And next thing I know, suddenly I know the R codes inside out, back to front, and when you combine that with that kind of economising, I guess you get with project builders typically, I had a better understanding about how things would cost with certain policy changes. And then, I had a massive car crash back in 2006, and I sort of reevaluated where I wanted to be, and I went out on my own. And I was out on my own without advertising for over a decade. That was through the GFC as well. So that was a pretty exciting time, but I got a huge range of different product understanding there. So that was designing hotels and student accommodation through to apartment developments, heritage apartments and all kinds of things, right down to a standard duplex, of course, which was a pretty common fare back then.
Yeah, well, standard duplex is difficult for some people. It's just a duplex.
Yeah.
I've got 5 minutes. Let me.
Yeah, it'll be fine. I'll just scratch that out.
But that broad range, doing the more difficult, complex stuff, puts the easier stuff or the subdivision stuff into perspective, because if you can do that, this is easier sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's quite literally 1 + 1 = 2, you know. And then I sort of I started doing my own little property development before the GFC, and I was lucky enough to see the GFC coming, so I sold my portfolio. But out of that, I was speaking to a few different agents, and they were saying, "How do you identify sites?" So that's when I was lucky to meet Mark Drexel, and Mark put me in touch with REWA, and REWA asked me to develop an R-codes course for their sales consultants. So
REWA is Real Estate Institute of Western Australia.
Thank you.
For people at home, yep.
Yeah, so I ran that for over 5 years, training sales consultants how to understand the R-code so they could correctly appraise a parcel of land.
Can you, what's the R-codes?
The residential design codes
Yep.
are a state-based planning framework that allows you to understand the maximum limit or the maximum yield of a property. So it's got different, average areas and minimum area types. It also prescribes setbacks and building height and natural ground level changes and all these kinds of things. And that's typically what local government might modify certain provisions to suit their local area.
Yep.
Let's say, for example, they don't want 3 stories in a particular sensitive area and it's zoned for 3 stories, they might throttle it to 2 or something like that. So, and I'm sure your clients come across that all the time.
Absolutely. So I'll just explain it in a different way. So basically the R-codes means, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, is basically the government decides how many housing they want in a certain area, and the R number that they give to it is how many homes per hectare they want in the area or residences in that area. So the lower the number, they want less people living in that area, which is normally a farmhouse area if it's really low, and higher ones might be high rises and apartments.
That's right.
Then from there they're looking at, the planning departments have to work out how many schools, parks, shops they want in that area to actually look after those people, which I think is done pretty well actually in WA. And then they got to look at, water, sewer, all the other things that go with it when they're doing a new estate. And that's really what they're doing with those R codes. And then each individual council, which I don't know if that's an Australia-wide thing, but they have their own say on their version of how they want their precinct and areas to look. Is that fairly right?
That's pretty much in a nutshell. Yeah, it's a great way to boil it down.
Yeah. So therefore, your setbacks are influenced by the amount of housing in that area.
Yes, absolutely. There are some local governments that will consider, say, 5 houses either side to get an average, and that might be more than what's prescribed in the R codes. Yeah. Otherwise, it's usually just what's written there, and sometimes that can come with an average. So you've heard of people averaging down to 3, but then you get what's behind, or sometimes there's just an absolute minimum depending on the code and what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So give you an example there. Like we had a client in Mount Hawthorn. They had an R30 block, which means you could have like a 4 metre setback, I believe, off the top of my head. And but that particular council said though on this street we want a 6 metre setback, which is their prerogative. They can do that. But I think if people are at home, they're getting their home design. Just make sure your designer has not only looked at the R codes, but has actually run council check their policy, because you can get stung super quick, and councils aren't flexible with that. So just.
I used to train people when I was doing this. I used to say the R codes is the first bucket that you sieve everything through, and then the local policies is the second sieve. And if you've got the 2 right, then what comes out is a nice fine flower.
I'm going to steal that. Yeah,
great.
Right, yeah, absolutely. No, that's gold, and that's where people have to be aware of at home. So then So just one more thing about you and your role. Assistant director, so not assistant to the director. If you watch The Office,
yeah. I'm not an EA. No.
So, assistant director. What's that involve? Like, what's your role with the HIA?
So my role is to look at quite literally every policy change, every suggestion that's out there, and filter it. To have my executive director, which is Michael McGowan, no relation to Mark McGowan, but also I've got a number of different executive directors at national level as well who coordinate all of the planners or the building specialty team in across the country, and so I help them understand which ones are needing to be commented on and which ones can be going through to the keeper. So, for example, if a local government is wanting to put building controls inside a local planning policy, that is a huge no-no for us because that requires positive RISs, which a RIS is a regulatory impact statement that requires positive cost benefit to be demonstrated. Local governments don't typically do that. They'll just say we want this desired outcome, and it's usually around sustainability. They want to drive extra sustainability outcomes. They'll ask for an extra star, without considering what that actually costs and if there is actually any benefit attached to that.
Gotcha.
If you're doing that within the code, you have to undertake that process. So that's already done. So messing with that can really drive some unaffordable outcomes.
Yeah.
So I'll look at that policy. Okay, we have to respond to this one. Let's assess it. Let's go through it. I'll call the local government. I'll get their understanding about what it means. We'll write a response. Nationally, we'll check it's nationally consistent, and then we'll put that as part of a response. We'll often publish our responses on our website as well, and we let members know through our committee structures or just through emails that we're doing this.
Yeah.
So people will understand. It's very clear as to what we do. It's no secret.
And
squirrel
why
business.
you're doing it too.
And why we're doing it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think it's a big one. Yeah.
There's no secret squirrel business.
Yeah. No, that's good. That works well. So just again, get into it. We could talk about anything, but breaking it down. So talk about, I guess it's good to talk about building and planning approvals for people, because a lot of people, we ask them, so we have to go through planning or get a DA, which is our development approval. To them, they go, oh, what's that? I thought we just go to council approvals. So in your words, what's the difference between planning and building approval?
So a DA, development approval, is usually required when you vary. There's in the R codes, again, it's all seems to centre on the R codes. There's these deemed to comply prescriptions, and they're pretty conservative. So they don't suit all blocks, but there's about an 80-20 rule out there, so most can avoid it, but I'll cover that in a second. If you need a design principles assessment, so that's where you've moved away from your setback shall be 6 metres, which is quite prescriptive, and you go into a quality statement where it says your setback shall be consistent with the streetscape. Well, that has to be assessed. What is the streetscape? So when you need that assessment, that's when it triggers the DA. Now, you can avoid a DA for a single house at the moment, so that's just one house on a block, if you comply with the very conservative deemed to comply requirements. You can just go straight to building permit. So most people who build in, say, a new greenfields estate, even to an extent an infill block that might be green title, you can often just go straight to building permit on the provision that you comply with those.
Yeah, most of what we do is established areas. Just on that, greenfield is basically a estate where there's no houses on there ever. It's been developed, and brownfield is basically an infill area.
An infill area.
Well, just for everybody. Yeah, we should have subtitles down the bottom.
We probably should, to be honest. Let's face it.
I just keep stopping just so in case, because people can get confused. But no, keep going. Sorry.
Absolutely, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Usually a DA, if there's any kind of contextual understanding needed for that application, for how it sits in its neighbourhood, that goes straight to planning, and an officer will assess that. Now, again, if it's a single house, that'll usually take. I think the minimum statutory requirement is 60 days, and it doesn't now have to go to council. Now, we had a win with that, so we were the ones that pushed that through. So single houses don't go to council.
Awesome.
They can just be assessed under what's called delegated authority, so the officer just assesses it and pushes it out.
Yeah.
That reduces sometimes the advertising requirements or the time it takes for approvals.
Can councils decide when that happens?
No. Well, not unless there's an absolutely... egregious departure.
Yeah.
But in which case, the officer probably would you'd have a big long list to correct anyway before they could even look at it. So
I'll give you an example, right? I'll say the council. So South Perth Council, for example, I live in that district, and we do a lot of houses through there anyway. And a really common thing that we do, and the only rule that we break, and it's incredibly frustrating because there's so much. Every house pretty much does it. Is we do a boundary wall. But they're all R15 blocks where you're not meant to have a boundary wall.
Yep.
So we will have a garage on the boundary, which almost always gets approved because everyone always gets it approved. But it's a 3-month process every time to do it. And in this day and age, that normally puts you into getting a price rise territory or just delays.
It really
everything.
does.
So, so things like that where you go, well, surely that's a quick approval and you have to get neighbours from there, which frustrates clients. And we're trying to go, we have to go through this process. That's the parts where people go, well, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? But it might not be from a council point of view.
So that is a...
I'm not trying to pick on any shire.
No.
Example, yeah.
But that is actually... It's funny you mention that because that is part of the can of worms that was the reason that the Part C of the R codes got gazetted.
Yeah.
Was because under R20, boundary walls are not as right, even though a block that's R17.5 presents like a standard block in Booragoon, say. But Booragoon versus the neighbouring suburb might have slightly different zoning and boundary walls are fine in one and not in the other.
Yeah.
And it's all those little nuances that are really hangovers, and I'm going to be blunt, they're hangovers from the 80s,
yeah.
where the idea behind a villa was to take a big 5x2 and make it a 3x2 with the same size kitchen and same size bathroom, just to make small houses, not apartments with courtyards or change the dwelling diversity. So part of that movement right back then has driven a lot of these aberrant, I'm going to call them, outcomes, because two suburbs can have two totally different outcomes and they're right next door to each other and you drive through them and you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Boundary walls are a problem, but again, because doesn't meet the deemed to comply provisions, that's the trigger.
Yeah.
So the goal is, and has been since 2015, is to just avoid planning altogether and just be as deemed to comply as possible.
Yeah. I just got to break that down a bit for people. So one of the great things you can do with council, I don't know if this is from you, but I love it how you can pay $300 I think it is, or something around that, and you can, when the plans are done, you've got sketch plans, done a site plan and so forth, you can send it off to the builder and you can do a deemed to comply. Well, they do so to Shire, and Shire will look at it and go, okay, you meet this and this, you're fine, you can go to building approval, or hey, look, you don't meet this is a problem for us, we now have to send it off to planning or for a DA, which is that 3 month, 60 to 3 month process, 60 to 90 day process, and from that, they have to do a proper full assessment. So it gives you that early inspection to turn around and go, well, actually, if we tweak these things, we don't have to go to planning, or no, damn it, we want to go to planning because we want to argue it or try and justify it. I think that's a great way to do it, rather than having to get all the way to the end and find out, no, we had to go to planning. So I love it.
I completely agree, and it wasn't us that put that forward. We completely supported it.
We'll give you the credit anyway.
But please don't actually, because it was actually local governments that suggested that.
Brilliant, love it.
Because they were saying, we're seeing exactly this. People who are saying we meet the deemed provisions, which is the thing, we're not going to get into that, but they actually don't. So give them the voluntary check up front. And it's a great piece that works really well. So the other option there, of course, is your building permit approval. Step back a bit. I guess the piece there around the DA, or the development application, is that it's to do with land use. So to double check that this area is zoned for single houses. Single houses are a permitted use under the scheme. Now do you fit the controls? And it's all about land use and effect on neighbours and the amenity of the area. So that's an approval to commence development. But then you lodge your building permit, and that can be certified or uncertified. I thoroughly recommend a certified pathway. The uncertified pathway is about 5 business weeks or something. It's a very
Can you explain that?
long process. So certified is where you get a private building surveyor to assess all of your information. That's your energy efficiency reports, your engineering, your survey, your soil tests, your site classification reports, all those things that you pay for as part of your preparation of plans agreement, or PPA, which is not a deposit under a contract. I have to be really clear on that. It is an agreement for someone to prepare plans.
It's a different podcast. Yeah.
But so those things that you pay for, they assess them, and then that gets lodged, certified by the building surveyor, and lodged with the building for a building permit with the local government. The local government are the permit authority, so they have to say, yes, the information we need is complete, or no, it's not. They actually can't question a building surveyor's judgment unless it's a performance solution. So it's unique to WA.
Performance solution, we'll discuss that in another podcast.
We can talk about that. I've just written
good.
my own. It's not easy. So the other option is uncertified. So that's where you just remove the building surveyor from that piece and it goes to local government and they assess it. The difference is that if you get a private building surveyor to do it, it's 10 working days in and out. And if not, and it goes to local government, it's 5 business weeks. So that time, again, it's an extra month, roughly, give or take, after mail is sent backwards and forwards. Yeah. Again,
especially at Christmas period, things like that.
That's another price rise territory, right?
Why do it? Yeah. And just on that, when I say price rise territory is, I'll probably get into this a little bit later anyway, is that builders can only really predict the future for a limited period of time, and so they can generally only hold prices for a limited period of time. And that's normally getting your house drawn up, working drawings, engineering, shire approvals, the whole thing. And they go, okay, that's a normal time period. We've allowed this much for the price to be held that way. If you've got things that delay that, like you put it on hold, you can't demolish the home because you've got tenants in there, you've got planning approval, all these other things can throw out that time frame. And then if it's too far out, they have to reassess it and potentially pass on an increase, which we're not really touching that just now. But that's just for people. That's why we keep talking about could trigger a price rise, because you've got an unforeseen delay that's outside the builder's control.
Yep, that's lifted straight from the contract.
Well, yeah, well, there you go. Well, yeah, read it enough times. But that's it, though. And that's where it may not be your fault, but it doesn't matter. It's not the builder's fault either. And they have to be profitable. Otherwise, you don't want a builder going under. So it's done to protect them. So the way I describe building and planning is them looking at the entire area, entire suburb, making sure that you're meeting the vision of the area, but also they're looking after the neighbours and streetscape, the whole thing. And then building is really looking at your home in particular. So everyone's got to get a building approval. The builder has to apply for that because it's under their ticket, and they need to apply that. So that's with the actual builder. Whereas planning is actually with the land, I believe that stays with the land.
It's land use, yeah. So it doesn't matter who owns the land. Yeah. The planning permit is issued against that address or that particular lot.
And they're two completely different departments at council that you're playing with. Our policy is that we go out of our way. We will move heaven and earth to avoid planning, because you're leaving it up to the judges, so to speak, to then really, really, really assess your house. And it's an unknown outcome. So we really advise our clients to stay with building because we can predict it. I like predictable.
Yeah, and there's always that 80-20 or 90-10 rule. Yeah. And I think if you've got a difficult site, following those conservative deemed to comply outcomes can actually be kind of detrimental.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is worth a planning assessment. And I think that's where you really have to take your designer's advice on that.
Yeah.
And whether that's an architect, building designer, drafty, your dad who's drawing it up, whoever it is, there are times when deemed to comply will just not work for your block.
Agree. Yeah. We try to avoid it, but if it's a legitimate thing, then let's go for it. I mean, we had one at another council, which is a point one, not to go through each one, but we had it was a 12.5 metre wide block in a suburb where it's normally big blocks, subdivided. There was a 140 square metre sewer easement at the back of the block. And so we only had a small bit of area to go through, the water court easement. So we weren't subdividing, the block was already subdivided into green titles. So we were building on that block and we wanted to have a boundary wall. There were 38 homes on the street that had boundary walls at the front for that. So we took photos of all of them, submitted to the council, and they knocked it back because they said it doesn't look pretty. And we're going, yes, but the house across the road's got a boundary. So we've changed our policy, can't do that anymore. And what I found out, which I didn't realise, is that so we went to them and said, but let's justify we've got a 140 square metre easement at the back, we've got to get to it. Water Corp require a 1.2 metre setback access, so forth, and you can't have anything in the way there. So we thought that was enough to do it. Anyway, it got knocked back because they said, no, it's against our policy, you can't do it, and the easement's not our problem, so that's how you have to do it. And in the end, we had to redesign the house. And that's where you go, if you have we thought that was a reasonable justification to have a boundary wall at the front there, and we even recommended doing do we have to, because they said it was ugly, so okay, well, how about we put a bit of landscaping in front of it and garden it a bit better, and it still got rejected. So I would have thought with planning, if you put a logical argument forward, and that's not setting a what do you call it, where that's not setting a precedent for the area, because I would say they could have a policy. If you have 140 square metre water easement at the backyard, well, you too can have a boundary wall. I mean, that's not going to come up very often. Like, hey, if you have those same scenarios. So I thought that was it. But and it was funny when we're talking to the planners face to face, because we definitely had to go to planning for that. It was 100% worth it. You could see the planners going, yeah, but it went to court this one time, or SAT, whatever, and we should talk about SAT as well. And they deemed it this way, so therefore our hands are tied. And you could see that they were agreeing with us, but they were going, this is our policy of our show.
That's really interesting you bring up SAT, actually, because...
and what is SAT?
SAT is the State Administrative Tribunal. So if you've got a problem with any government decision, as an applicant or as an affected person, you can often lodge an appeal against that. And that includes if you go as a builder, if you've got a disciplinary action being made against you for something you disagree with, you can also take that to SAT.
Yep.
So it's quite
And who's on the tribunal?
You've actually it's a legal arena.
Yep.
There are presiding members, effectively judges, magistrates, sitting on SAT who will determine something. But the funny thing about
it's
SAT...
about $5,000, isn't it, or something like that, too, roughly?
I think it doesn't cost anywhere near that to lodge it, but I think it's everything that comes with it.
Yeah, okay, because you're going legal here now,
you are down a legal avenue, absolutely. There are people who think SAT is just an extension of talking over the table, and they show up and there's a desk and there's a stenographer and they're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was.
It's got real.
You can see the blood drain from their face, right? SAT is a unique arena because SAT have to make what's known as a clear and cogent decision, and to do that, they've got the authority to pull a pre-existing approval apart. And we have seen that where a local government has said yes, this is okay, and SAT have turned around and gone, actually, it's not okay, and we're going to unpick that, and we're also going to unpick what you're appealing as well.
Magic.
So it can work for you. It can also work against you.
Yeah, you roll the dice. Yeah.
Well, I think that's where you need the advice to go into an arena like SAT. So if you are going to appeal it, you need to understand that if there is a SAT decision that may affirm what the local government's saying, you're going to have a very hard time getting over that. Now, there's another piece there that if you disagree with SAT and you've got a decent case, you can go to the Supreme Court. Now, we've recently had a very prominent case in December last year that went to the Supreme Court about one clause in a local scheme, and it was affirmed that the applicant was correct. So that has ramifications now for every local scheme.
Yeah, because they will have to abide by that.
Well, because if they want to appeal, where do they go? SAT, and SAT have to consider the higher court, which is the Supreme Court. So it's a legal process, but planning is law, and I think that's what people really need to understand: is that planning is law, and you have to abide by the law. It is governed by acts and regulations. It's really important.
And then if yours is a slight deviation, then you got to weigh up whether you
appeal it or whether you modify it. But this is also the double-edged sword of the officer only or delegated approval pathway for single houses, is that there's no option to elevate it to a council for a wider decision. So typically it's assessed. If the assessing officer disagrees, that's where it stops, or it's an appeal.
Yeah.
So
it's a big jump.
And then you have to demonstrate that the assessing officer has erred in their interpretation. And what do you use to do that? SAT cases.
Yeah.
So it's very
and then
it's
it's time and potential money.
Absolutely, but I guess there are plenty of people who will. I mean, we've seen it. They'll waste SAT's time with plot ratio considerations, or they'll waste SAT's time with 200 mil setback variation.
Yeah.
But they've got the money to fight it, so they will, and they want to be right. And you just think that this is not worth the effort. Just pull the 200 out of the garage and be done with it. Yeah. Well,
that's that. Let's find another way. And what we did with this house in particular, which had this boundary wall, and again, it just blew my mind that, like, if ever there was going to be a reason why we should have a boundary wall. Plus, also the R codes have it that if you have a block that's less than 10.5, you should have a double garage. So we're now squeezing the front elevation. Not that that's breaking the rules for the setback there, but we're going, well, we're making a squishy front elevation now, which is really detracting from the street view. So it's going, yes, the boundary wall's not pretty, but it's better than what we did. And what we did is we just shifted the front. We just removed 100 mil from each of the front rooms, and then we just shifted it slightly, and we made it work, and it looks great. Yeah. But it's that frustration of going, well, surely this makes total sense, but the guys were. They're handcuffed.
It probably made sense to them because they've seen the streetscape, they've assessed it, and they've gone, this is a continuation of the desired future locality of the area, but that SAT decision says that we
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah, it stopped us. Yeah, so it's crazy.
And,
But yeah,
and unfortunately, it's the one lot left as well, right?
Yeah.
The orphan lot.
Yeah.
Cops it. Makes it
Yeah.
even more an orphan.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like this. But that's the process you got to go down, and that's where we say, look, let's avoid planning. Like in that case, we couldn't. We had to go down it. It was totally worth going down that process. It would have been a great outcome. But if we can avoid planning, that's great because you're in another world of what you're doing. And at the end of the day, the codes are there to basically give you great guidelines as best you can with that in mind.
WA's R codes are, I wouldn't say they're unique, but the way they function and the way they guide development is
Yeah.
really, it's one of the public servants I deal with a lot. She often says it is firm but flexible.
Yeah.
And I would agree with her. I really would. It's
How much flexibility do councils have with the R codes? For example, if you're 1 millimetre out or something like that, can they go, okay, well, it's close enough? Or do they have to be, like, is there a tolerance there? Or
So in the past, and up until recently, some local governments were still offering this pathway. You used to be able to submit what's called an R codes variation form.
Yeah.
So it was a little form at the back, and you just write it out.
Haven't had that for years.
You
Yeah,
put your
yeah.
justification in, and we were only talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
And
I used to do it in Coburn for site coverage all the time, 1% over or whatever.
yeah, Swan were offering it until a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And what it meant was that the building surveyor could look at it and go, oh man, you're 1 mil out. Like, okay,
Yeah.
sure, whatever, right? But the way that, because planning is law, the way it functions, it's not conducive to allow a building surveyor to make decisions as a decision maker when he can only make, because local government is a decision maker from a planning perspective, but they are also the permit authority from a building perspective. So a permit authority can't make a decision maker can't issue a permit.
Gotcha.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's crossing those boundaries, and it's. I understand the difficulty from a legal perspective, and it's probably like a high level falutin law thing that I'm not privy to, but the reality is the lines are being blurred.
Yeah.
So we're having these discussions now at state level about bringing something like that back formally. But limiting to what it is. So
Yeah.
you might, if you're varying a street setback in one location for no more than, 10% of the facade or something that might be no more than 5% of the setback, that can be considered what's basically a minor variation. Now, their talks, that's not gazetted, but people recognise that is a needed piece because, if you get a square block but it's got a 45-degree front setback, that's doesn't help anyone as far as setback averaging concerns.
No.
Or the worst one is when you've got a wall that needs a 1.5 metre setback, but the boundary's angled. So
Yeah.
one corner is 1 and the other corner is 2.
Dealing with one right now. Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
It's just the nature of an infill block.
Yeah.
So they're the kind of scenarios where you go, okay, what difference does it actually make whether it's dot point compliant or not? And I think they're good discussions to be having, particularly at a state level, because our R codes are elevated. They're actually what's now known as subsidiary legislation. So they sit right above, pretty much near the top of the legislative chain now.
Yeah,
So,
magic. It's great you guys are looking at that. Because it must be really hard for you. I know we talked about this the other day actually, but to write R codes and then go, okay, how can someone misinterpret this? And how can someone take this completely out of context, whether from an architect's point of view, trying to bend the rules, or from a Shire's point of view?
So in years gone by, it was quite literally the commission or the agency would just write the R codes in consultation with a few core group of people and just put it out there and publish it, and that was it. Especially since COVID, maybe a little bit before COVID, the agency and the commission have recognised that's probably not the best approach. And to their credit and their fundamental credit, they send it out far and wide. So they'll now have people test it. They'll pay for people to draw things up against the code and find the problems.
Okay.
They'll say, okay, we're proposing this new wall height. What does that mean? Oh, on a sloping lot. Did you know that works out to be 4 stories, not 3 for that coding?
Yeah.
Because if you do it this way on a typical block in this area,
Yeah.
oh, right, okay, right. So we need to make it maybe natural ground level instead of just wall height. So it allows them to tweak the settings to get the intent they want. But they'll also send it to local governments, so local governments then can test it against their assessment frameworks as well.
Yeah.
And then they'll send it to industry groups like ourselves, UDIA, MBA, PIA, PC, all those crews as well. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, okay, that makes sense because it's a tough one because it's so broad. And
every local government's different. And again, to quote this public, the lady I was quoting before, she said it has to work in sandstone or sterling.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter where. And I sometimes I have to remind people, that Cocos Keeling Islands is R40.
Yeah.
People don't know that, right? But so what you're setting in for apartment codes or dwelling codes here has to work on a tropical island in the middle of the ocean.
Crazy,
because it's an Australian territory.
Yeah, there you go.
It's funny, right? But it has to work. Legislatively, it must work. So
it's got to fit the area you're in, and you're writing broad statements.
Very broad statements.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very interesting and look tricky. But I definitely would not want to do that for a career. But good luck to you.
It's fun. It's actually fun. You
got the brain for it.
My desk is just doodles and squares and boxes and shapes and details and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Do you sometimes hear stuff and go, how did you get that from that?
Yeah, we see that a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when there's a comma in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Or there's no comma where there should have been one. That can upset the entire wording of a clause and you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't we see this? How did we not read it? Everyone was so, we're definitely delivering that, and it reads that way.
Yeah.
And then some graduate planner just reads it differently, and it upsets everything. A whole new SAT case sitting there waiting on this one clause.
Yeah, or tens of thousands of dollars or whatever. Either way. Yeah, it's crazy.
So,
but you go, oh, okay, wow.
And that's why the commission and the department really want to advertise and get as much feedback as possible to stop that stuff happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, it's a tough job. Well, good on you for doing it. So we talked about mould earlier, and I guess this links to the mould, and correct me if I'm wrong, the mould is becoming a real issue. It's always an issue, but it's becoming more of an issue because of all the energy efficiency stuff that's coming in, because houses aren't breathing in as much as they used to. Yeah, absolutely, because it's getting like your houses are locked up to keep the heat or the cool in, depending on the season, and really that's not. That really helps mould to thrive, and that's becoming an issue for us. So becoming more energy efficiency is great, but we've got more of a mould issue that we've got to deal with. But that's one thing we've got to look at. But we've got the cost of living in or building in Australia is getting up there, because you've got, not only have you got the cost of building by itself, but you've got energy efficiency. Obviously, has gone from trying to meet 6-star to actually getting 6-star to now 7-star. And who knows from there, which is you have to add a lot more money to your home. Then you've got things like bushfire attack levels, which is BAL, which means if you're in a BAL area, that you've got to make sure your home the embers don't burn your house down.
Metal screens, minimum clearances, very tight tolerances.
And not to get too much into this, but BAL 12.5, actually a lot of that stuff is good stuff to do in your home anyway. Good move. Yeah. It doesn't, yes, it costs a bit more, but actually good value. It's actually good doing it.
12.5 isn't the end of the world.
No, yeah.
It's when you get in your 19s and your 29s,
and the 40s,
29 especially, that's when you just go, oh my gosh, this is tens of thousands of dollars sometimes, depending on where you are.
Yeah, we've just had one where we've got it from 29 to 19. And
huge
it's just shifting the house slightly and things like that. But and then you've got like noise attenuation, so you're too close to freeways, under the planes, and all these different things are just making costs go through the roof. And then you got that hard thing about how do we keep things affordable, where we're also getting more energy efficient and all these other things. So it's that fine line for builders and people at home trying to afford new housing, which we need, and it's hard to navigate that. So the question behind all that is does the government take that into account? Like, how do we keep things more affordable? Because you might have the most energy efficient one bedroom, one bathroom home, because that's all you can afford. But we've sort of got to try and meet in the middle for people to get more housing. Yeah,
gosh, that is a multi-pronged question.
We got time.
We're permanently reminding everyone about the affordability piece. And it's unfortunate that, particularly in the past with previous governments, there's always been a case of it's just that. And every department, it's just $500, it's just $750, it's just $1,000. And when you add all that up, that is literally death by 1,000 cuts. So we're constantly having to remind every local government department, every state government department, all of them, that this adds money and it's adding up. So I did a cost analysis on a 6-unit subdivision, and just the surcharges alone were 48%. to develop land. So 48% of the land mortgage that you have is just taxes. Now, tell someone that 48% of their house, their mortgage they're paying for the next 30 years is tax.
It's a lot more than that when you work out the interest repayments there.
Yeah, so there's some phenomenal numbers hiding in there that we're having to tease out all the time. And I know a lot of people say, well, we need improvement in building stock because aging building stock is getting demolished and the new houses of today will be the aged building stock of the past. But we're at a theoretical limit. We're actually at a theoretical limit. We're beyond that curve of diminishing return when it comes to things like energy efficiency. WA has done more heavy lifting in going from 6 to 7 star than Victoria did from going from 4 to 6.
Yeah, wow.
So, but we were already there. We were already doing houses with cavity brickwork. We're already rating at 6.2, 6.3 anyway. And every NatHERS, which is the software update you use to calculate that, every NatHERS update adds roughly 0.1 of a star. So 6 stars back then was more like 7 back then, and 7 where we are now is more like 7.5 where we are now. So that's not easy to relay to people who are sitting in planning spaces and I can talk about that stuff underwater with the guys in building and energy who are the regulator. Yeah. Because we're all construction nerds there. Yeah. And welcome construction nerds, I must admit. It's great to have people who understand what I'm saying at the other end of the
Well, you need that because if you're forever trying to explain what you're trying to explain.
Yeah, if I have to keep making ministerial statements, it just glosses over the top. The action is in the minutiae, the detail. So yeah, we're on that diminishing curve, unfortunately, which means anything we make from here on out, any changes we make from here on out, will either add a significant amount of cost or fundamentally change what we're doing. And a lot of people will say, well, get rid of double brick. But the Cheneth engine, which is the software package that you use to assess these things, favours thermal mass, internal thermal mass, as it should do, because that's been a thing since Roman times. You have your lightweight stuff on the outside and your thermal mass on the inside. If you talk to anyone about reverse brick veneer, for example, they'll tell you the same thing.
Good way to go.
Yeah, so NatHERS recognises that. So double brick actually does pretty well. It just comes back to your glazing ratios, really, which is the headache, because glazing adds a lot of cost now, right? The cheapest wall, I will never forget, starting out as a graduate drafty, the cheapest wall used to be a 25 by 9 window.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's a 2.1 by 2.1 window, because it had one fly screen, one slider, one locking mechanism.
So money chuck more window.
Put a bigger window in there, right? Because cavity walls used to be exempt from classification, cavity brick walls. So that was the cheapest way. But if you do that in a bedroom now, that window has to be either low E or double glazed, because that window has to perform the same as the building fabric, which is the walls. So they're those changes, and suddenly you go, okay, well, hang a minute. Now, if I want to keep that wall cheap or that house cheap, I've got to reduce my glazing profile. So now I've got a house that faces west overlooking a park or overlooking the ocean, or faces east over my dam, and I want a nice big window to wake up to. That window's now just gone up $2,000 or $3,000 just to have that luxury. Yeah. And of course, my parents have that, and my sister built 5 years ago, and she's got that. And so why can't I have that? Well, because the rules have changed.
And you pay for the view. You don't want to ignore the view.
Yeah. But
actually, just on the note, there was a house on West Coast Highway. I've got to take a photo of it. They're on West Coast Highway, and they've got all wall facing the ocean. No windows. And I've just gone, there's one window obviously for surveillance, but I'm there going, oh my God.
Why would you turn your back on that?
Because, and this is a whole different conversation, but because if you look at energy efficiency, I don't know the people, I just saw it, is energy efficiency is not to have your windows facing west.
Or large open space.
So I'd assume they've put solar orientation over the view. And to me, I talk about it regularly. If you've got a good view, the hierarchy is view over solar orientation. Because if you're looking at West Coast Highway at the ocean, you wouldn't ignore that and have all your face northeast. But
well, again, I don't know why you wouldn't just create a deeper shade structure over those windows and then have no east and south glazing, and then just get it coming in what you can. From
you're talking with logic. What are you talking about? Yeah. I've said it. I say it a lot. I'd love to go back in time and interview people from the 70s and 80s because when we're doing extensions to homes, I'd love to go. They go, okay. What was that? Like we went to a home recently and it had all these like holes in between all the different rooms, like this brick hole in between all the rooms, and we've gone, why? And they had this.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, and we found out why in the end because we looked it up, and we had these reverse recesses, like a fireplace recess, but reversed. So the recess was on the outside, but on the dead side of the home, and we put up the old plans. They actually had it on there. So they had this vine. They really like this plant, and they've actually built the home around the vine, but it's on the dead side, so no one's ever going to see it unless you walk down the side of your home where there's a 1 metre gap, and they got this recess so the vine could grow up the side of the house that no one could see. And the brick missing is they had a cat, and they wanted the cat to get around the home. So they just removed a brick from each room, and the cat could slide under there and get into the room they wanted. And it's like,
Okay.
Mount Hawthorn.
I've never heard of anything like that in my life.
Very happy cat, I assume. But that, I was gone.
That would have been
whoa.
the draftiest house in the world.
Mate, we're renovating for a reason. But the point is, I'd love to go back and go, what were you thinking with this? Like, What was your logic?
I live in a house built in '81. It's an old tri-level, but everything's under one plane of roof. It's a big 20-degree pitch.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So there's like a massive tree
cool,
cubby
actually,
house inside this massive sphere, and God forbid you want to heat or cool it.
Yeah.
So you just got to open the windows and hope for the sea breeze.
Yeah.
But it's the coolest thing to live in. But it's not practical. I would never build this house. But the fact that it exists, we had to buy it.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
There's photos of my kids, 2 floors up, dangling their feet over the void through the balustrade, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you could never build this today ever.
No, it's like a tree house or something.
It is literally a tree house with a roof. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Oh, this is off topic. My wife and I often talk about we'd love to build the Brady Bunch house.
Oh, yeah, who wouldn't?
Mate, that was wicked. But apparently that was like 2 different houses that they did for different things.
And a different front elevation.
Yeah.
The house they used for the front elevation was a different house, and then there were 2 houses. One
there could be a project we could work on, mate. Just recreate it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, that was a cool house. Anyway,
orange laminate and all.
Yeah. Oh, bring it back. Arches are in fashion. That will come back soon. So why not?
Yep.
But no, so affordability and soil orientation. So I sort of digressed.
Oh, that's okay. I can do that all day. So the affordability aspect really comes back to, like, I guess, getting an economical design, particularly in Perth, in our predominant climate zone, is to really keep that glazing area to floor area ratio between 15 and 20%. So if you've got a bedroom, try to keep it as low as possible. So try and do a minimum window in a bedroom. I know some people love natural light, but you can do great things with window heights that are narrow versus versus highlights. I mean, highlights allow room to function. They work well, but they don't let a lot of light in. They're usually covered by an eave.
But also, highlights are deeper than what people realise. You can actually go quite deep with a highlight. A lot of people go, I don't want a highlight, but it doesn't have to be that deep. You can actually quite deep.
Yeah. Especially with higher ceilings. You add that extra 3 courses to it. It's just that height, that eye height.
Yeah. And
then from there you can go right up. We should do that with the old apartments under the old apartment code.
Yeah.
Just so that you walk in, you see sky.
Yeah.
And that was always nice.
When you come to office here, that's all highlight. It's quite deep. Yeah.
Very similar.
A lot of light comes in.
Yeah.
But you're right. The depth helps.
Yeah, but if you've got a standard home, or bedrooms are usually not the most luxurious places for massive ceiling heights. You might have 31 or something through there, right, for fans. But, so you can do cool things with heights of windows and the width, putting mirrors next to windows or to reflect light. It works. I'm doing it in one of my little projects, got tall, narrow ones instead. And you can see out and it's nice.
Yeah.
But in living areas, you really don't want to get beyond 20. And that's, I think, where people really struggle, because everyone wants a big sliding door opening into the alfresco. Everyone wants a big window in the kitchen.
When you say 20, what do you mean by 20? Just for people at home.
So 20% glazing the floor area. So if you've got 100 square metres of living area, you don't want any more than 20 square metres of glazing.
Yeah.
So that'll be, 2 metres high and no more than about 10 linear metres. But 100 square metres is a big living area.
Sliding doors,
most are around 40 square metres roughly, give or take. So, there are tricks to getting that economical. And it's really important to either have a building designer or a drafty, or, like I said, if your dad's drawing it up, whatever, to understand that, or at least know someone who can inform you of that as well, because that will drive economic design as well. So we're finding many houses that might be just plain old cavity brick only need some basic insulation, as long as their glazing ratios are lower and they're getting away with just plain low E or single clear glazing.
I'm going to put you on the spot right here. Do you want to come back for a podcast where we talk all about, because it's my favourite subject, about how you can save money designing a home without taking
Absolutely.
away from it. Because that, we talk about all the time, and where there's so many, like, big part of what we do is we pull apart people's designs where they, when they bring a design in and they go, oh, we love this design. And you go, do you want feedback on it? And then it's one of the worst designs you've ever seen, but they can't see it. They're not used to reading it. But often one of them is like, we've saved people $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 on just not taking anything away from the design, but just efficient walls and like everything. And it's great. And there's so many ways you can do it just to save money, and you're not getting an inferior design, you're just getting a more efficient design.
To rationalise. I call it rationalising design.
Yeah.
And it's a great point you raise. You know, like if you look at some houses, they got niches for everything. Like Nana's cabinet that was left to you in 1972, and it's actually just a masonite thing that probably doesn't belong in the hallway, right? But you're emotionally attached to it.
You can't get rid of it.
Yeah. So you build a $12,000 niche to capture this $20 cabinet that is probably not worth anything to anyone but you. Sure, you want to do that, that's fine, but just be aware that's going to cost you money. Or framed walls. Framed walls are amazing. Like every external corner on a frame wall costs a lot of money, so don't do external corners on frame walls. Make sure they terminate.
We priced a TV recess. It was for the external brick alone was $5,000.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, it's just like, do you realise what you're spending money on? But that's a different podcast. So I just want to put you on the spot there and go, you come to it, say, because that would be a very popular podcast, but there's so much stuff that people need to know, and they don't realise what they're doing. And you and I, we look at that instantly and go, oh, do you really want that?
Yeah.
And what's hard for us though is when people bring a design in and they've gone through blood, sweat and tears to design this thing, and they love it. They've been through a whole process, and where they're going, do you want, it's really hard because we're going to offend you.
Oh, I can feel the anxiety there. Just looking at this plan going, oh my gosh, you're already $500,000 over budget.
Yeah, mate, we'll get into that in just 2 seconds. But that thing though, and you're going, and they're so married to it that it's like if your child's ugly is basically what you might as well say that. It's the same offence. And they'll defend it to the cows come home, and you're going, okay, I'm just going to offend you here. I don't want to be the messenger, but I'm trying to help you. But yeah, that's a really legit one. So we'll get you back on for that. And that's a little advert for the future podcast with Aaron Sice. But yeah, the affordability thing is a real issue for people as far as all these different requirements that you get these days. And if we eventually get to 9-star and 10-star for energy efficiency, although, and I don't know where we're going with that, but
I don't think we'll get that
crazy,
high.
okay. Yeah.
In Australia.
Yeah.
There are many other considerations we need to think about. One of the ones particularly, and you mentioned it before, the condensation provisions.
Yeah.
So the more energy efficient you get, the more the temperature difference grows between inside and outside. Now, there are people out there that will say passive house is the answer, blah, blah, blah. But at $5,000 a square metre, someone's, I did it for $4,500. I'm like, okay,
cool.
Okay.
It's still expensive.
Yeah, but the reality is that they have overheating issues. That PHPP software has overheating issues in Australia. So, do you now want a hot house?
Yeah.
Because that's what why not just not do that and live in a tent, because that's also hot.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit facetious to make that comparison, but you understand my point. But so there are condensation provisions really do change things as well. So. And it means different things in different regions. So condensation in Albany is pretty much a permanent thing, but in Kalgoorlie, it's when the sun sets and the temperature outside crosses the dew point. It's like, have you ever lifted a sheet of tin up in a paddock, like, gone to Pop's farm and lifted the tin, and it's wet underneath?
I was going to say, yeah.
That's how some inside of walls in places like Kalgoorlie can get if you have that hyper energy efficiency inside versus outside when that sun goes down.
And how do you write R codes for Albany compared to Kalgoorlie?
Well, R codes are one thing, but these are just condensation provisions in the National Construction Code.
Yeah.
So that's your building permit process.
Yeah, but I'm talking about shadowing and things like that. Like, you gave it your point earlier. But
So in Broome, for example, they designed an estate. I think it was Dev WA. It might have been Landcorp before Dev WA. I can't remember. Please don't quote me on that. But they designed
we're going to quote Aaron on this, by the way, people.
So there was a housing estate where they designed the house first on the block with the correct orientation, and then from the house they then designed the subdivision around it, because it was the only way to make the house perform properly with prevailing breezes in the humidity. Very successful project, and it worked really well. But that luxury is not available in higher population centres where we have to drive efficiency as well. So, but it was an excellent project and a good head start, I guess, into what might be needed.
Yeah.
But not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do that.
Because if you're getting stung by all these fees up front, the BAL, the energy efficiency, all this stuff, that's where you might spend 30 grand, 40 grand in those areas before you've even started building your home. And that's where I just get concerned because building prices keep going up for Perth. Now, they're going to go up for a while. And that's where it gets really, really tough for them, for people with that affordability. But we should be an energy efficient home. It makes sense when you come home, you go, actually, I don't need to turn the air conditioner on because the house is comfortable.
It's great.
It's great.
I love it.
It's a good lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think there's some people who think that because, like, whether they see me or the HIA brand or whatever it is, I don't know, but they see us, railing against some of these provisions. It's not that we don't want them. It's like they're not resolved.
Yeah.
If you put this piece in place, you're going to bridge that condensation barrier and you're going to get wicking of water inside.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Oh, you're against energy efficiency. No, what we're saying is that detail's not resolved. So a classic example is if you have R5 insulation in your ceiling, which is now unfortunately quite common, it's very expensive. But if you get too close to the edge of your roof, it touches your roof sheeting. So the condensation on the inside of your roof then hits your insulation and goes to your ceiling, and then your cornices start to mold up. But you're against R5 insulation. It's like, no, I'm not. Yeah. What I'm saying is that detail's not resolved. Yeah. So please fix that detail, and then we can be behind it.
Yeah, it's two extremes, like
it is, and you can't just think, they need more insulation and this and that. You have to think about all those granular details when you do a house.
Yeah. So you shouldn't smoke. You hate people that smoke. No, that's not what I said. You shouldn't. Well, what are you talking about?
I don't hate people that smoke.
I'll just say it's not good for you. Yeah. I could talk to you all day long, and obviously we're both pretty passionate about this. So we'll cut it here. We'll do part 2. We'll get you back on for sure. Aaron, that's great. But we've got to ask our usual stuff. So, and I'm not sure if I gave you the heads up on this or you've watched our podcast, but a couple of things. First of all, we have a gift for you.
Yay.
So this is what we give to our guests who have come on there, and this is completely unique to you. So if you look on the side, you're actually guest number 31.
Oh, sweet. That's cool.
So technically, you're the only person in the world that has that hat. You're unique. So when people stop you, ask you for your autograph.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way,
I'll get a rugby jersey that says 31.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. That's great. You are, appreciate you coming on. What's funny enough, though, is the podcast we had that just got launched yesterday, and this is, we launched it yesterday, so it was recorded a while ago. 2 days later, they went to Sydney and they went to see Oprah. And they ran to Oprah in the hotel, and they've been hanging out with Oprah all week. And
maybe that's in my
well, I think so, because I think Oprah may have approached them after seeing them on the podcast and gone, "Hey, I loved your podcast.
1 + 1
Let's hang
2,
out."
Right?
Absolutely. So who knows, mate? So you pick your celebrity, and I'm sure they'll be hanging out with you after.
That sounds great.
Thank you for coming on. But the question we ask everybody, and it's really important: you're building and renovating your home, and it's going to be a hard one for you actually. You're building and renovating your home, and then all of a sudden, you get a letter in the mail, a check in the mail, and a long-lost relatives going, "Hey, here's $10,000. You have to spend it on your home." What would you spend it on?
Oh my gosh. Building or renovating?
You pick. Can be anything. People have chosen all sorts of different things. It can be anything you want.
Peace of mind. I value.
You pay for peace of mind.
I value sleep at night factor, the SANF factor, SANF, sleep at night factor. I would spend that money on extra waterproofing.
Extra waterproofing?
Waterproofing.
That is unique. You are the very first person that said that one. I love it.
To know my shower's never going to leak, my toilet's never going to leak. It would be getting rid of all the flexi hoses and doing copper connections. It would be making sure that all of my wet areas are completely waterproof. Floor, walls, junctions are overdone. All of it.
Waterproof the whole bathrooms.
The whole house. Let's just do
the whole house. Right.
Whole house. If I spill a cup of
really
water
stretching that 10 grand, mate. Yeah. Industry discounts there, I'm sure.
Sure. Industry discount.
Yeah. No, that's a great one. And you're right, because that's not sexy, right? Waterproofing. But I tell you what, it's sexy as hell when you have a problem.
When it goes wrong, there's nothing worse.
Yeah. Waterproofing is totally undervalued. I think that's amazing. That's actually an amazing answer, and spoken truly for someone in the building industry who knows a lot about building. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on. You're a wealth of information. I'm stoked you came on, and we'll definitely have to get you on again.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.